Welcome back. So let's go ahead and talk about risk management. Now risk management, okay, we've decided that something is a hazard. Okay? We've decided that something is a risk. Now what are we going to do about it? Well, first of all, you have to start looking at things like control options. It could be something very simple, like there's pollutants in the air, so wear a face mask. Pretty easy, right? It could be something as simple as, well, do we even need that product or toxin anyhow in our process? Can we just not get rid of it with pretty easily? It could be, is there a new technology available? Is there something actually more cost-effective out there? So, what are the different kinds of methods that you can use for reducing risks? Someone's dealing with toxic materials. Can they not put on gloves? Another good example. There's also legal considerations. Okay. Again, a lot of legal regulations are also supplemented by guidance that tell you what you're supposed to do to reduce environmental impact anyhow. So why don't you just look it up in the regulation and guidance and do what that says? And of course, there's economic and social factors. Economic and social factors. Risk cannot always be based on scientific findings. We may say that, the scientific community does not necessarily believe that global warming exists or the evidence is not conclusive, but what if they're wrong? How bad could the consequences be if we ignore the possibility that we are contributing to global warming? Okay? How will this impact our local community? So these are the kinds of other things that you have to look at with regards to risk management. Okay, so when we actually get into risk management, you first have to begin with a cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis. Well, first of all, you have to actually look at how much is it going to cost to regulate something, or to reduce the environmental impact, and what's the benefit? Okay, and how do you actually look at the cost-benefit analysis? Well, you have to look at how much is it going to cost to enforce it. How much is it going to cost to fix the equipment so that it no longer pollutes? How much is it going to cost our competitors to fix that? Are we going to lose any jobs because we're not allowed to pollute anymore? Is this going to raise the cost of our product and therefore consumers won't buy it anymore? And of course, is it going to detract from productivity? Those are things that you have to weigh when you decide whether to be more or less environmentally friendly. Now, we talked about the cost, but there can also be benefits. There could be ecological benefits. Okay, will it make our community or our local area more healthy? Or you could also look at, will our workers be healthier and therefore more likely to show up to work and be happier, more productive workers if we are better able to maintain our respect for the environment? Okay. So why we even do a cost-benefit analysis, you have to admit it's kind of cruel, right? Shouldn't you always do the right thing for the environment? Why do you have to be looking at things like productivity losses, etc.? Again, it does force some sort of a quantitative, methodical consideration of each policy on social welfare. It takes the emotion out of the argument itself. And it can help you decide, based on a given amount of money that you have, which things do you need to focus on first. Of course, the criticisms of it. It's kind of sick, in a way, I think, to do things like place a value on the environment, to place a value on a human life. That's something that you have to consider. Is it worth, how much is it worth for Uncle Bob to have a pain-free and healthy last 15 years of his life? That's what you're doing with a cost-benefit analysis. How worthwhile is it to have clean air or forests or certain endangered species to our children, our posterity? Those are some of the criticisms of cost-benefit analysis. Now, there's a variety of regulatory options out there. And the first one is command and control regulation. Okay? Command and control regulation. Command and control regulation basically says the federal government passes a law, you will do this, this, and this, and that's it. Okay? You either comply with regulation or you're violating the law. Figure it out. Most businesses will, of course, comply with the law. But that can be very costly for industry. And you have to remember, a lot of the kinds of organizations and firms that are heavy polluters have a high fixed cost. I mean, think of a power plant. When you build a power plant, you're building that power plant anticipating that it's going to work for the next 50 years. And so if the government comes in and they close it down and you still got 30 years of life on that power plant, you will never recoup your investment. That's one of the disadvantages of that. However, it can be a good thing because it can simply put a stop to polluting right away. Now we also have market incentives. And market incentives are pretty good because they can allow a company to decide how to meet a limit on pollution or environmental degradation. And some of this can be quite simple. Environmental taxes. Okay, you want to pollute more than we would like, that's fine. You pay an extra tax for that. And that kind of punishes them a little bit. But, again, when you've got a firm that has a high fixed cost on equipment, this is not such a bad thing. They can at least make some profit and recoup some of the investments, and hopefully in the long term, they will get more environmentally friendly equipment or processes. Then, of course, there's also cap and trade, emissions trading. Again, so that basically says that a company is permitted so many carbon permits, and that number of carbon permits is reduced over the years. And of course, why is that a good thing? Imagine let me give an example. Imagine two power companies. Okay, one's got kind of dirty coal power plants, and the other one's got really nice wind and solar and all that stuff that doesn't pollute. Okay, the company that has the coal power plants can buy carbon offsets or carbon permits from the clean energy producing company. So they're actually paying another company not to pollute so they can continue to pollute. Again, it sounds ridiculous, but you have to remember in the long term when each coal power plant goes out of commission, they're not going to buy another one. They're going to buy a clean producing plant, okay? So that way they will hopefully pollute less. Again, it's a way of easing environmental regulation in over the long term in such a way that's not completely detrimental to business. And of course, there's also information disclosure. Basically requiring companies to tell the public, who makes a choice whether to buy their products or not, how much they're polluting. And then, of course, finally, there is voluntary regulation. And voluntary regulation is basically regulation without any sort of legal compulsion or sanction. Now, why would anybody do that if it's going to be more costly? Well, it shows consumers that you're being a responsible corporate citizen, and people may be more inclined to do business with you or buy your products. That's one reason. But again, there's also the first mover advantage. If you can get ahead of the regulatory curve before regulation is passed regarding the environment, then you'll be ahead and everybody else will be struggling to keep up with you, and that gives you a very distinct competitive advantage, which is also a good thing. And I believe this wraps up our discussion of the environment. So I hope you found this lecture enjoyable. Again, my name is Duncan Pelly, and we will see you next time.